Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls of all ages, hey guys, thank you for joining me. I'm Mark Goldberg. This is another exciting episode of Mark Vlogs Watches. Now, as you can see by my billowing shirt, it's quite a windy day, so I apologize in advance if my dead mouse lavalier microphone windscreen cover doesn't completely work, but stick with me, things are going to settle down. And hey, before we get into the meat and potatoes of this particular video, I think we should get right to the quick fist watch check, and here's why. Because today I am wearing, let's move this around a little bit, see if we can make it look pretty. Today I am wearing, there we go, it's starting to look pretty, the James Cameron. It's a deep blue watch with a half a gradient dial. Now in a little bit we're going to go ahead and turn this camera around so that we can discuss this watch in more detail, but it is a big, thick monster watch. In fact, I am comfortable telling you right here, right now, that this is the biggest, baddest, thickest, meanest watch that Rolex makes in stainless steel, bar none. And in fact, I'm sure it's the thickest production Rolex, period, end of story, regardless of material. Guys, I've owned this watch for about 3 years now. And, hey, if I'm going to be truthful, I've had maybe a little bit of a love-hate relationship with this watch. I think I'm over it. I think there's going to be more love than hate, and I want to tell you how that happened. I want to discuss the owner experience of this watch, what you have to do to mentally wrap your head around it, because it's not the easiest thing in the world. And believe it or not, there's another watch that sort of brought me some peace in relation to my thinking about the Rolex Deep Sea Sea Dweller James Cameron edition, and that would be the Grand Seiko. The Grand Seiko diver, also in steel, quite a bit thinner, different lug profile, but the same 44 millimeter diameter. And so we're going to talk about how this watch influenced my thinking and gave me even greater love for this watch. Now, in order to do that, I think it will be wise for us to turn the camera around, knock out a bunch of statistics and measurements, including weight. So let's do that, and then we're going to talk about the owner experience of the James Cameron, and we'll also talk about how I was influenced by the Grand Seiko diver to achieve a better layer of understanding and love for my Rolex. Okay guys, I've decided it would be smart to move inside where we don't have so much wind noise, and here are the tools of the trade. So first of all, let's take a look. We will put the James Cameron here. And let's do some quick measurements here on the Grand Seiko, the Seiko which is grand. First, we have a diameter here. Let me just get this noodled correctly. 44, maybe 44.4 in terms of the width of that watch. And now over to the Rolex Deep Sea Sea Dweller. Almost identical. So guys, width to width, these two are nearly identical. Now, to the eye, it appears as though the Grand Seiko is a little bit larger. I think that is just a trick due to the configuration of the dial and its relationship to the bezel. You see, this is a smaller dial, that is a larger dial. There's a lot more going on here with the ring lock system on the Rolex, and that just gives the optical illusion of bigger width here, but in reality, it's just it's a bigger dial. Okay, let's talk about thickness next. Coming here and measuring our thickness, we're at 14.1, which is fairly controllable, but wait till you see this, guys. And bear in mind we have a domed crystal here, so that's going to contribute to the thickness. So 14.1 to 17.2, so it's this baby here is 3 millimeters thicker, and let me tell you what, it is a tall watch. Now that case back kind of does nestle into the wrist a little bit, so it's not quite riding as proud or high as you might think, but it is a chunky monkey. Now let's go ahead and fire up the scale. That would be the on button, wouldn't it? Okay. Yeah. See, that's that button there. I think that's metric. Here's the American button. Okay. So throwing the Grand Seiko up there, we come up with 197 grams. That's heavy. That is heavy. For reference, my my Rolex Submariner weighs 148 grams. And here we have 197 grams. So it's like 50 grams heavier, right? Okay, 197 for the Grand Seiko, the Seiko which is grand. And this one is 207, 206, depending on the wind. So it is heavier by a factor of about 9 to 10 grams. And you know what, honestly, when it's on the wrist, it feels a bit heavier, and I'm going to tell you why. Let's quick look at the lug profile of the Grand Seiko. Notice how, oh, and by the way, note the Zarasu polishing. The lugs turn down right there. And so I'm going to throw it on the wrist real quick. Give me a second to do that. When it's on wrist, those downturned sweeping lugs have the happy effect of wrapping the wrist. So this watch hugs the wrist, and therefore it achieves a layer of comfort where I don't so much notice the weight or size of it. Now, the Rolex is a slightly different proposition. Let's go ahead and get this guy on the wrist. Because that lug profile, being flat from the edge to the other edge, from here all the way across here, it's pretty much a flat edge. And you know, there isn't that sweeping downturn. And so the result, now mind you, I'm having to flex my wrist to make this camera angle work, which is definitely exaggerating the air gap there. But it does give you the idea. This thing does float a little bit. Let me put it in a more natural position on my wrist, and rather than bring my wrist to the camera, let me bring the camera to my wrist. Now it's not quite as bad. But you see it's floating a little bit, due to that protruding case back. Does it rock around on my wrist? Not very badly. Now there is a glide lock clasp here, which I'm going to show you. The glide lock clasp on the Rolex Deep Sea Sea Dweller is different and much more highly engineered than the glide lock on the Submariner, which everybody thinks is amazing, and I do too. But you have to remove the Submariner from your wrist in order to adjust the watch, and this guy right here, you adjust it on the fly. So one of the tricks, there's a couple of tricks to making this watch reasonably comfortable on the wrist. The first is adjusting it correctly. That picks open, you'll see the ratchets, and now this will tuck under. I've just made it a smidgen smaller. I'm not going to have wrist claustrophobia here because it's not too tight, but now it's not moving around so much. And I find with this watch, just due to air conditioning, humidity in the car, out of the car, I need to adjust that glide lock clasp multiple times per day, much more than most watches. Because when this is just the littlest bit out of adjustment and I do a motion like that, the thing flying around on my wrist creates discomfort. Now, before we go much further, I want you to take a look right at the 6 o'clock position, and you will see where it says Swiss made, that there's just a little line between the words Swiss and made. This is a Mark I. This is the original James Cameron. I will throw the reference number in right here. Now there is a second version of it in which the lugs were made a little bit narrower, but the bracelet was made wider. Let's take this off and let me give you the measurements of the bracelet, because one of the big complaints was that in relation to this giant watch head, that this bracelet starts narrow and goes even narrower and made it hard to wear. And that is why they came out with the Mark II. This Mark I was only in production for just about 3 years. So we start out here at 20 millimeters, and we taper down to a very narrow 15 and a half millimeters. And the Mark II, I'll put its reference number in right here. it is a wider bracelet, and I will put the measurements of the Mark II bracelet in now. And that wider bracelet is supposedly stabilizes the watch and prevents it from tipping around on the wrist. Now, you will note that I have got a beautiful flat wrist bone here. If I had a chubby round wrist, this might be a more difficult watch to wear. But I have this really nice flat, wide wrist bone. My wrist measures 7 1/4, so it's not giant, but the configuration, that flat bone there, means that the sheer edge, without severely downturned lugs, will ride nicely on my wrist. So let me tell you what's happened here, guys. I really do very much like the Grand Seiko. It is a big watch, it is a heavy watch, but it just is, you know, pretty darn comfortable for its specifications due to those sharply downturned lugs. So I've been wearing this watch quite a bit. And then one day I put the James Cameron on and I was like, hey, feels better than I remember. But I think that this was like my training wheels, you know? So if you guys want to know how to pull this off, how to make it a daily wear, well, I think you need to wear a bowling ball or a brick around your wrist for a while, and then this thing won't seem so bad. So there's just a couple of other things that I want to note. And that is, you know, if you're wearing a Daytona or if you're wearing a Submariner, a GMT, and then you put the Deep Sea Sea Dweller on your wrist, man, it's going to feel really uncomfortable. So I think, but here's the thing, guys, you'll get used to it. In a couple of weeks, you'll barely notice that it's there. So I've decided that I'm going to make this my daily wear for a while. I probably won't work in it. I'll probably work in my Marathon because that's just a nice tactical watch. If I bang it up on a dog kennel, I'm a dog trainer, guys, so if I bang it up, I won't mind. I'd rather not gouge this thing up. But when I'm not working, I will probably be wearing this more and more. It's a really nice watch. This guy has been getting some rotation as well. I also like it. It's a completely different animal. The movement in the Grand Seiko is a spring drive. They call it spring drive, and what that means is that it is powered by a mainspring, but regulated by a quartz and electromagnets, by quartz crystal. So I would call this more of a quartz than an automatic. This is a fully automatic watch. The Grand Seiko, being a very high caliber quartz regulated movement, is accurate to like 0.1 seconds plus per day. I mean, it's amazing in terms of its accuracy, but it should be. It's primarily a quartz movement. This is a fully automatic movement, and I think I'm getting about plus half a second per day out of it right now. It's just amazing. I'm really, really happy with this. Now, I will say I tried taking off this bracelet and putting it onto a rubber B strap, thinking that I would like that better, and I did wear it that way 5 or 6 times, trying to get used to it. Didn't look bad. Let me go ahead and put a picture of the James Cameron on a rubber B right here. So now that you've taken a look at that, I don't know what you think, but I think I was fooling myself, guys. There's just nothing better than the oyster steel bracelet, so I'm going to sell that rubber B. Cost me $300. If anybody wants to pay me $200 for it, it's pristine because it's barely been used. Let me know. My contact information is in the description of this video. Well, listen, guys, I want to thank you for having joined me. Please subscribe to my channel. Throw me a like if you don't mind. Look at that gorgeous dial. Hope you liked it. And I'm going to throw up a couple of pictures of it here where you get a better look at the color in that dial. Thanks again for spending time with me. Goldberg. Peace out.